Pleasure of the board. Turn your mic on.
Second that.
Motion made and seconded. Microphone. Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. Thank you. We have an update from the Board of Health. Unfortunately, there was a scheduling conflict. The Board of Health is not able to make it. I'm happy to give an update as much as I can. The Board of Health chair and I called a meeting of some frontline department heads and our counterparts at the school committee on Monday just to make sure at the end of the year we were all on the same page as far as pending vaccines and CARES money. As anyone who's been paying attention knows, we're still very much in the red. We're averaging about 10 new cases a day. It's much worse than it was in the spring, as it is through much of the state and through much of the country. We are encouraged by the reports of a vaccine, but every report that we get is that it's going to be a very small stream of doses to us and a long wait for most regular folk. It's going to be frontline people, nurses, seniors. You've all read the reports. So while there is a light at the end of the tunnel, we're probably still only about halfway through this. And so as we did around Thanksgiving, we're encouraging people to celebrate the holidays with their immediate household, to continue doing the things that we've been doing to keep this at bay. Wash your hands, wear a mask, just be safe. We're all on the same page as far as the school committee and the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Health, our frontline people. We're doing the best we can to continue our services. We did close down access to town buildings other than appointment, and we're hoping it doesn't have to go further, but again, we're following the governor's recommendations on this part. It's been a long year for everybody, and we're trying to get through this. We just encourage everybody to keep doing what's been working. Are there any questions that I can try and answer as best I can?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I would like to request that the Board of Health include raw data for any demographics they can provide as far as the caseload in town, as regarding age and maybe the number of households, to give the community an idea of how widespread this really is and who really has been affected.
Sure, I can pass it along. I don't know, frankly, I don't know how they get their data. I know that reports are filed with the state and then comes back to us, and then we do contact tracing. It's my understanding that most of this has been spreading within households where someone will get sick and spread it to 3 or 4 other people, and that's where we're getting our cases. It's not a situation like in Fitchburg where it's a church or a wedding or something. I frankly, that'd be a nice out. But as I've said before, it seems that the things that make us the things that make us special in this region, that we're dense, that we are a place where people come to shop and to eat and to work, is working against us here because it's hard to stay away from people in this town. It's very very dense, very tightly knit place. So I will certainly pass it along to Steve Lipka and see what more information we can get. I'm just afraid that there's no riddle out there that we're not solving. It's just we are 7 square miles of 15,000 people, and if we're not being careful, it's going to spread. So I will pass it along to them, but in case anybody out there thinks that we're sitting on something that we're not sharing, it's just as simple as we're a very small town with a lot of people in it, and this disease is spreading. So thank you. Any other questions? Moving on. We good, Mike? Okay. Do you want to skip? you want to go out of order, Mike?
They haven't joined yet?
Sure.
Yeah, they're not here yet.
If it's okay with Chief Lutz, we'll go out of order. Fire Chief Lutz is here to recognize a life-saving incident involving Fire Captain Jason Burton. Please step forward, guys. Welcome.
Good evening. The fire department wishes to recognize Captain Jason Burton for his actions on one evening in November. While watching television on the evening of November 9th, 2020, Captain Jason Burton had a female neighbor frantically knocking on his front door. When Jason asked what was going on, the female responded that her husband was not breathing. At that time, Jason asked if 911 had been called. Jason went to the neighbor's home to find a 60-year-old male in his bedroom, unresponsive and not breathing. At this time, Jason started CPR and waited for the arrival of Clinton's ambulance in Sterling ALS. Because of the selfless actions of Jason, this gentleman spent Thanksgiving with his family and soon to be Christmas. This goes to show firefighters are always on duty and ready to help. Myself and the Clinton firefighters are extremely grateful that Jason was in the right place and at the right time. We are honored to call you a member of the Clinton Fire Department. I spoke to Harold Naughton. I'm going to have an accommodation.
If you want to stick around, he's on the agenda, so...
Yeah, that's fine. I just wanted to just kind of go over what the events were and how the outcome was pretty extreme. We're very happy that the gentleman's home.
These are things we take for granted, and I think it's just a great example of how our frontline public safety people are really on the front line. They live here. This is their town, and I've said that before about the police and certainly about the fire. It makes it special. Like this is their town too, and it's not something where you punch in and punch out. It's something you live. So thank you for your service, and thanks for. I mean, it probably sounds silly, but I'm sure it's something you didn't think twice about. So thank you. Open up to the members of the board.
Mr. Chairman?
Please.
I couldn't express my sentiments better than the chairman already has, but on behalf of myself, my family, the community, and I'm sure everyone else here, thank you very much for your service. Firefighters, police, DPW, all our public safety people are dedicated to the community far and above just a job. And as a 60-plus-year-old male, I appreciate knowing that you guys are there and are available, even when you're not on duty. So thank you very much for your service to that gentleman and to the community.
Mr. Chair, I've had the pleasure of knowing Jay my entire childhood to my adult life, and there's nothing that epitomizes more than that event of who Jason is as a person. He's someone who cares for his neighbors, cares for his community. He's a great father, and we truly are lucky and proud.
Thank you.
Yeah, just like to add, I mean, some of us, like myself, I go to work, fill out reports, do things, think you get stressed out about stuff, and here's a guy who his job, he's literally saving somebody's life. So it's humbling, and Bird, thanks for everything that you do for the town. Thank you very much.
I just like to thank the chief, Captain Burton, and all the fire department down there. Do a great job. Very much appreciated.
Harold's due to come, so if you want to stick around.
So we'll hang out for a few minutes, that's fine.
I see you, Michael. Okay. If you if it pleases the board, we'll continue out of order and skip over, that's all right, to 2021 annual license renewals. I kind of want Mike here for this. The issue was, as we discussed at previous meetings, waiving fees, and I guess the issue would be if we're waiving fees for everything, including jukeboxes and entertainment, or if that was just liquor licenses in certain establishments. So I guess I'll open it up and see what we're thinking about. Otherwise, we can go through the list.
Mr. Chairman, if I may?
Please.
I'm not sure that we were crystal clear in the previous vote, but I'm supportive of, and there may be inequities involved in this. There's some businesses that are paying for these licenses and aren't allowed to open at all.
Yes.
And there's other businesses that they're open and running, but they're all suffering from the same situation. So if the floor is open to a motion, I'd make a motion to support waiving all the license fees listed on our agenda for renewal.
I'll second that motion.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. So we'll go through these. I think we can just go by batch.
Unless you're interested in a motion to renew all the licenses as shown.
Yeah, if anybody has, we good with going all the way through, Ed?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to renew all the licenses shown on our agenda.
I'll second that motion.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. Thank you. Representative Nodden, we went out of order. I'm sorry. I'm running a tight ship tonight. No, you're up.
Come on down.
You don't have much time left.
Come on down.
It's snowing.
You can walk slow. Please. Yep, you're up. Thank you. Yes?
Hello.
Thanks for coming out, please.
Hello.
Sure, yep. Chief? Go ahead, man.
Report, I'm happy to be here waiting.
Yeah, go on. Make sure the mic's pointing toward them.
Hear me?
Yeah.
Would be last citation. None of that. I'm happy to be hereby known to all that the Massachusetts House of Representatives, congratulations, Captain, standing. I remember fortunate success in
Mike,
giving this 20th 20 State House.
job be able to present this evening.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Michael. We're 6 feet. Is this all right?
Yeah, come,
I don't want Stevie Lipka getting mad at me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I might proceed?
Please.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to come in front of the board this evening with a what will be, unless something even crazier than what's been going on the last year happens, likely be my last legislative report to your board. And over the last 9 months, I want to report that my office has helped, as is our job, over 600 constituents with issues of unemployment, health care, employment, housing issues during the COVID pandemic, as well as working with numerous companies, including Nipro-Jabil, in the town to get them into the PPP pipeline and sell to the Commonwealth. I was proud of some of our local companies that stepped up early on in March and April and converted some of their manufacturing processes to help the Commonwealth. But I like to feel that's what we've always done, that we've had a high standard in my office. As far as some specific legislation for the town, as you can imagine, anything that wasn't budget related or COVID related really took pretty much of a back seat for the last 9 months. But some of it is now percolating. You'll be happy to hear that Clinton's annual reimbursement for our water treatment and sewer and the free water coming from the reservoir was included in the budget and on both the House and Senate side, and was not in any of the governor's messages that came back as far as wanting changes or potential vetoes. So I'm confident that when we finalize the budget in the next few days, that will be there again for the 25th year. The alcoholic licenses for 1044 Main Street, that was signed into law in August, House 4337. The Super Summit is now in third reading in the Senate. We've asked Senator Chandler and Senator Tran to intercede to try to move that out. It's passed. It's done in the House. The Fuller Field legislation is in the House Committee on Steering and Policy. That is, we've asked that be released to the floor. Just so you kind of understand the context a little bit, normally, without the pandemic, the House would have been done in formal session on July 31st, and most of these bills would have had to be refiled. And I'm not saying they won't have to be by Representative-elect Kilcoyne, but the fact that we will be in session until December 31st is unfortunate the way we had to do it because of COVID, but for bills like this, it's quite likely that many of these bills will get to the governor's desk before the end of the year. The Fuller Field bill, the changing of the name of your board is also in the House Committee on Steering, which is the last stop before it gets to the floor. I've spoken to the chairman of that committee. Actually, I'll come back to the chief bill. The bill on granting additional licenses is still in first reading. I'm not incredibly optimistic about that. That may be something that Representative Kilcoyne will have to revisit, but we'll keep trying. And alternate members of the Conservation Commission is also it's in third reading in the Senate. We've asked Senator Chandler and Senator Tran's office to make that move. That bill should get done. I'm curious, the bill authorizing Chief Levager's extension, I'm assuming we still want to push that just because, you know, in case the search committee or whatever doesn't you know, act by the time, in case he wants to stay. I'm just looking for a little guidance there. That,
Chairman, if I may, unless I'm wrong, we're counting on the chief to be available unless or until we've replaced them in some capacity, and maybe that legislation would be helpful in us continuing that process.
So we'll do our best to get that done. Again, I believe his birthday is July 6th. I track that because my birthday is July 4th, so I keep track of people whose birthdays are around mine. So we'll do our best to make that happen as well. So most of those are looking pretty good, and anything that's got a real, you know, short suspense on it are looking good, and the rest, if they don't happen, they will for the new year. We've actually already, even though we're not quite finished, needs another session or so with the FY21 budget. Crazily enough, we are already working on the FY22 budget, and I've submitted the requests that I typically submit for the district and for the town for the next budget, and I have faith that you know, my successor will carry that on.
Chairman, if I may, Representative Nutt, I just want to clarify your comments about the likelihood of the bills making it to the governor this session. Did I interpret what you said correctly in that the liquor license one is probably the most vulnerable one, or least likely to? Yeah,
because it's so it's still a little further behind in the process, and that's strictly a mechanism of the bottleneck that's been created because of the situation that we're in. I don't have any doubt that of the bill's success, either this session or very early in the next session. Though did Stephen reach out, Michael? Okay, so we did, the committee was looking for some more information on it, and I think, so Stephen from my office is working with Michael, and so I don't, now that we have that, I don't have any doubt as to its eventual success. You know, as I've done for 26 years, I'm kind of expectation management. I don't want to sit here and tell you, yeah, I'm going to make this happen by midnight on December 31st. So
I just want to raise the point and reinforce the idea, at least to me, that that's the most important of all those home rule type petitions that we have going, because it has a significant impact on the financial future of the town. We've got a number of liquor licenses that are not being utilized, but if they were called in by the town, they would disappear. Or if the holders of those licenses turn them in, they're going to disappear unless this legislation moves forward.
So because of the nature of the other bills, honestly, are not big lifts. It's getting them through the process, but the extension of the chief's time, that's been done. I've done probably one of those for almost every one of my towns over the years. The change of your board name, the conservation commissioners, those don't get a lot of scrutiny or need a lot of research. Because of the nature of this, dealing with liquor licenses, it gets more scrutiny than other pieces of legislation do, as you can imagine. So I'll stay on it. Thank you. Till the last minute. You know, before I ask the opportunity to make a couple comments, were there any other questions about the legislative items?
One thing that came up, and Michael, maybe if this is still a good time to talk about it, to go out of order again, we have a senior tax rebate program here where we've had some issues because of COVID, where some people who applied for the tax rebate program weren't able to be placed in work, so they were willing to do whatever it took to get their rebate, but for one reason or another, the opportunity didn't present itself. And Mr. Gibbons, it's his opinion that, well, we were thinking about just saying, you know, pushing it through no matter what, that's not possible.
The town, Hank, accepted that statute several years back, whenever it was. But the statute, I mean, you have to provide services to get the rebate.
Sure.
So the Board of Selectmen were considering whether or not they, since we have about 4 seniors who we just didn't have the work for them because of COVID-19, if you could potentially give them that rebate without them providing services. My office took a look at that. We don't think you can because there's no, the statute doesn't provide that flexibility to the board. But we were thinking there might be a bit, maybe, I can't believe other municipalities aren't facing the same issue who have adopted this statute where they have people that they couldn't provide work to. So maybe it's something that, in a bill that could, like some of these other COVID bills, they could make an exception whereby if there were people who did qualify under the statute but there was no work, they could get the rebate anyway.
If I had had a little bit of knowledge about it, I probably could have filed an amendment to the budget because we did the budget so late. If either Gibber or Mike, if one of you could just shoot me a note tomorrow.
Yeah, I will.
If some vehicle comes up between now and the end of the year, there is a possibility we may do a supplemental budget. And if I can give it a try, or certainly we can, pass it on to Meg Kilcoyne for her to run with.
All right, thank you.
Sure. No, it's a great idea.
Yeah, I'll send an email first thing.
People come to count on those things, and if there's nothing for them to do. Right. Right. No, that's entirely understandable. So.
Thank you. Any other questions? The floor is yours.
Mr. Chairman, I thank you, and I promise not to take too much of your time, but because of the odd circumstances in which we find ourselves, and I never had the ability to have any type of event to thank the people of the town or of my district, as I say, as I move on to new challenges, I appreciate you giving me this opportunity, especially to speak to the people of my hometown. And if you don't mind, I probably will read from notes here because I spoke to Boylston the other night and I got a little emotional, so I'm trying to avoid that. So I just want to thank the people of this hometown of mine for 26 years of support, friendship, affection, and guidance for both my family and I. 26 years, that still astounds me. There are an overwhelming number of memories and people who come into our lives in such a positive way. Not just myself, my children. And I think back to the days when my mom and my dad were stuffing envelopes for me down in the old J.C. Penney building, now Clinton's. And I know, Mike, your mom and dad were stuffing envelopes for you too. And you were an honorable opponent, and you keep doing a great job as town administrator. I wish the rest of politics had stayed like that over the last almost 3 decades. I was proud to have set up that little office down on High Street beside the senior center at the time, and I would always joke that a good part of being in that office was that it was beside the senior center, and a bad part of being in that office was that it was beside the senior center. And in the early days, there were a group of guys that hung around there, played cards in the morning, and now and then they'd come in, and they're all gone now, but if the senior center for some reason was closed, they had no problem coming in and just hanging out in my office for a few hours, and I was happy that they thought of it like that. I've always been happy for the office to be thought of as a community resource. I like to think we lived up to that. A lot of good memories, just too many to go through. The Memorial Day parades, Christmas concerts, St. Patrick's Day. I have a nice picture down in the office of the 150th anniversary of the town, marching down Main Street with some of my helpers. This town always steps up. I remember even more recently, a year ago, when Congregation Shirai Zedek had its 100th anniversary down the Elks, and it was at the time where you may remember there were synagogues around the country that were being attacked and vandalized, and they were concerned. And the people, the people who weren't of the Jewish faith of this town stepped up and showed support to them. It says a lot about this town. And And I promise I won't take up too much time. I could go on for the rest of the night, as, as you well know. But I think we've done some good things for the town. I hope so. Left it and affected people's lives, left it better. Constituent services were always our hallmark, I'd like to think. People that came in that, it was always, I would tell the staffers that, it might be the 100th call. We always had a very busy office. Maybe it's because of the profile we kept in the area. But people, I would say, it might be the 100th call of the day, and it might be very hectic, but I always try to tell the staff, but that might be the most important call that person's making today. And the people of this town, especially the real old timers, it was like pulling teeth to get them to call the rep's office and ask for help. But thank God they did, because many of them really needed it. And we'd go up, and that heat'd be out, or they wouldn't have a can of tuna in the cupboard. And if we could find a way to help them, we did other things. The reservoir. I had specifically called Fred Lasky, the head of the MWR, yesterday. Just tell him I'm going to keep an eye on him, make sure he keeps taking care of my town. The Veterans Athletic Complex, the new high school, the rebuilt middle school, the new elementary school, the water treatment plant, which this board honored us by naming for my dad. What's going on High Street now, all the Chapter 90 monies, the McNamara bill. That was originated in Lancaster, but we know that tonight we honored another firefighter. I like to think that I've kept my philosophy simple, and that was helping people. And many of you have probably heard me tell the story of the night before I left for my first tour in Iraq. And my father and I, sitting down the old timers, and I asked him to tell me some stories of his war that he never talked about it, like that generation was so famous for, being so stoic. And what few people know is he was a medic with the 4th Infantry Division, the first wave that went ashore at Normandy Beach. I went to Afghanistan later on with literally the same unit. And you know him, he started laughing and said, "What do I have to tell?" And I said, "Oh, I don't know. You're a medic at Normandy. You might have a couple stories." And he looked around the bar, and of course he knew everybody in the bar. And he knew some trial or tribulation they all had been through in their lives, and how they had overcome and worked to keep their families together, or keep working, or got a part-time job. And he just said, those are the heroes. You don't need to put a uniform on to be a hero. And as we were leaving later on, he said, wherever you go, just remember those people in that bar and what they've done to make their lives better and their families. And I always tried to remember that. And he said, "I'll make you a deal. You come back in a year in one piece, and I'll tell you my war stories, and you can tell me yours." And unfortunately, the following February, I got the call from the Red Cross that he was ill and was going to pass. And I came back, spent a couple hours with them. I came back on emergency leave, and he passed. And another story I've told very few people is that at his wake up at McNally's, somebody came through the line, and they were very kind and wished us well and sorry for our loss, but he'd also shoved a piece of paper in my jacket pocket. And he goes, "If you can take a look at that, I'd appreciate it." And the fellow himself has passed now, but so later on in the evening, I took it out, and it was a note, and it was his son's application for a job with a state agency. And with a note, "Whatever you can do to help." And initially I thought to myself, that's outrageous that someone would do that walking through a wake line. And then in about 30 seconds I said, no. I said, can you imagine what it took for that father to do that for his kid? I mean, I could have yelled at him. He could have been embarrassed. But he loved his kids so much And then I thought, my father would want me to take care of that kid. So, and that's what we did in the day. We made a call and tried to help the kid out. Some people in this day and age may be offended by that, but that's what we did. We tried to help people. So, in closing, what I think is that this great town of Clinton is about to pop. I really think great things are coming. Just be a little more patient and a little more careful. Wear the masks, take care of each other. Let's get through these holidays. And I'm seeing it. I'm talking to people all around the state, and this town has great things coming. And I know this board will provide that leadership and the guidance and some strong direction to help make that happen. And I'm going to be proud to watch that. I hope my mom and dad are looking down. With some pride. And I want to thank you for all these years. God bless.
Please. Mike.
At least you were willing to listen, and you listened carefully every single time, and I truly appreciate that. So thank you for your service to the town of Clinton and your friendship to me.
Billy, thank you. I've always respected you, and I've always enjoyed our conversations, one way or another. I thank you for the friendship and support and guidance over the years.
Harold, I the whole board would like to thank you for all your help.
Johnny,
Wish you
thank you.
best in the future.
Yeah, good friend.
I appreciate, the conversations we've had and, the guidance that you've provided throughout, especially this last year, and, your words of encouragement for my path in politics, and I'm proud of everything you've done for me, and you've always answered the phone whenever I've called, and I thought that was something that was, it was very special, I appreciate it, and I'm
Thanks, Matthew.
go away.
Mr. Chair, yeah, Harold, thank you for everything that you've done. Obviously, I think I speak for the board, we wish you weren't leaving, but we wish you the best, so thank you very much.
Thanks, Ed. I appreciate it.
Yeah, my colleagues have covered a lot. Your job's not an easy one, and just the fact, the fact that this town is in such a good position, I think you deserve a lot of credit for. But as you pointed out, I think it's the less flashy stuff that really is the legacy that you should be most proud of. The stuff that it maybe isn't hundreds of thousands of dollars, but it really affects someone's life in a way that they'll never forget. So, yeah, as my colleague said, we thank you. You're a great Clintonian. Our town is proud of you, and we're a better place thanks to you. We wish you nothing but the best in your next act, and hopefully you keep in touch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm not going too far, Ed, and I'll still pick up the phone, Matty. I don't know if anybody's going to want to call me anymore.
Right.
Thank you so much for everything.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, if I could,
Two standing ovations. Correct. Back on schedule. Ms. Chapman. Let's see if this works. Yep. Can you hear us? Hello? Can you hear us?
She can see you. I don't think she can hear you.
Are we muted, Mike? Terrific. I can, yes. Got it. Thank you for being flexible with us. We're a little challenged sometimes with the technology. Ms. Chapman's from the Montechusett Regional Planning Commission. They're finalizing an application for a green communities designation for our town, and we need to take a vote approving an energy reduction plan prepared by the Montechusett Regional Planning Commission. What can you share with us?
I'm not sure I heard you very well, but you just introduced me. So I just want to refresh your memory on green communities and how the process goes. So in order to become designated, communities have to apply with 5 criteria. To go over those. So criteria 1 is to cite, to allow for your zoning to allow as of right site renewable or alternative parcels that comply with this, so you are covered by criteria 1. Criteria 2 calls for expedited permitting for those items in criteria 1. And you have the site plan review, which is approved within 90 days. So also under criteria 1, as well. And so certified vote a letter criteria 4 to adopt fuel efficient vehicle policy, which is done, and vehicle inventory for all your four-wheel vehicles. Replacing vehicles fuel efficient. So I have the inventory. I'm waiting for list. Others confirming those votes. Criteria 5 is the stretch code, which you passed the law, and I also received from the town clerk the certification of that. So back to criteria 3, which is what I'm here in front of you tonight for. This is creating an energy reduction plan. So you create a plan saying what facilities are your energy users and how much energy do they use and how are you going to make them more efficient. Basically, the state gives you a template and you have to exactly follow the template and give them all the information that they're looking for. And so what you have hopefully in front of you tonight, Michael, did you give them copies?
Yes, the ERP is, yeah, it was in their packet.
Okay, great. So the ERP follows the template that the state provides, and there are yellow items in that ERP that's information that I need to get from the database based on data that I've received from National Grid. So also with that energy reduction plan is a table of potential projects that you plan to do to reduce your energy consumption by 20% in the next 5 years. I've used fiscal year 2019 as your baseline because you've done several projects already within the school and some of the town buildings with LED lighting, and you still have projects that you are completing that are under agreement with National Grid. So all of those projects are listed in the table so that you can get credit for reduction of energy use for those projects. It just means that those particular projects that are in the agreement with National Grid will not be paid for by green communities. So if on the table, if they're listed as complete, you're going to get credit for them, but green communities would not pay for them. Any of the projects that say they're planned would be covered under green communities grants. So you and the superintendent are required to approve the energy reduction plan of how you're going to reduce your energy usage by 20%. And do you have specific questions in the document? Would you like me to go through the whole document?
I just saw, it seemed like there were a lot of things that are still to be determined. I'm just seeing a lot of blank spots. Is that homework that we have to finish, or will that be sorted out later?
So the items in yellow, so what you have to do is, there's a Mass Energy Insight database where all of the data lives. All of the electric and natural gas are uploaded automatically by the utilities, and the towns are required to input propane, oil, gasoline, diesel, anything that's not automatically uploaded. So I've been adding data, and once you put in the data, it has to, it processes overnight, so you can't get the numbers to plug into that document until the data processes. But everything in that document is accurate except for those highlighted numbers. It basically says, those highlighted numbers will say, so these number of projects are going to reduce your usage by, say, 100 MMBTUs, and that's 5% of your annual usage. So those numbers aren't going to affect your approval, I don't think. I mean, the number that's at the bottom of the spreadsheet, oh, it's so hard to explain when you when you're not in person. You have the spreadsheet in front of you. At the very bottom, there's a total MMBTU savings of 9,248 MMBTUs. And so we're saying that that number will get you to a 20% reduction in energy use over the 5 years.
Okay.
So what I'll do in the ERP is I'll take all the projects that are building projects, add up the MMBTUs that's going to save, and then give them a percent of what your total usage is. And I'll do the same for the other 4 categories, which are street lights and traffic lights, open spaces, and vehicles. So you just have to, it's just a plan for them to see where you're going to save the energy from.
Okay. Any other questions from the board?
Just one, Mr. Chair. Is this, so I know this was in the packet that we received before this meeting, but and forgive me if we have, but have drafts of this plan been presented to us before, or is the first time that the board saw this was in the packet sent out for this meeting?
I know we've discussed it, but this is the first time we've seen this.
I
Yeah.
can't hear anything.
Yeah, I think
Anybody?
this was the first time that they just completed this week. They had completed the plan to get it in for the application. But they had been working the past year with the facilities director on the projects. There was an assessment done probably about this time last year on the buildings to come up with projects, and they were working with the facility director on some of these initiatives. But the intents of the ERP and coming together with the savings information, they just completed this week for the board so that they can get the application in by the end of the month. So.
Okay, so they're looking for a vote from us?
Yes.
I mean, I'm in
Michael, I can't
favor
hear what
of
they're
energy
saying.
reduction. It's just, we get our packets on
It's gonna cost
Monday
us.
night. It's 2 days later. This is like a big report.
What's the
I would-
deadline?
I would like time to be able to go through it before we vote on it. But, you know, I'm only one person on the board, so if everyone else, if it's critical that it has to get approved, I don't see anything in my review of it over the past couple days that I'm against, but just a report of this nature, I just would have liked more time to go through it in greater detail. That's all. So if a vote is needed because it's critical that for this to move forward before the end of the month, I haven't seen anything that I object to in here, but just as a point of order in the future, I'd like to have more time to review documents of this nature before we're going to be asked to take a vote. That's all.
Mr. Chairman, I've got the same question. Is there a consequence to us not?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I couldn't hear anything that you were saying, but I just want to say that the application is due on December 30th, and this was your last meeting before that date, so that's why I scheduled this. But I can have the numbers solidified by the end of this week. I just want to make sure that you were able to vote in a meeting.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, again, what is the consequence of us not approving this year?
It's just that this round for the designation application would be just for this round. So we just continue working on it to firm it up for the next round. So they do them every year. They do the designation every year. So we just can continue working on it to, firm it up for the next round.
But it's an annual thing. So if we miss this, we'll do it again next year.
Sorry.
It's an annual thing?
Right,
Okay.
right. Yep.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I'd make a motion that we approve the energy reduction plan prepared by the MRPC.
I'll second that motion.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion?
Only that in the future.
Understood.
I'd like to have more time to review these, that's all.
Yes.
And Mr. Chair, if I may, some of these projects are already done, that we can capture work that's already done. So, and then there's just some proposed work that, that they were looking at for, you'll see some schools and different projects. But this just allows us to put this forward. If we get the designation, then you can apply for grants to do some of the projects on this list. So.
You understand, it's not gonna cost us money, we're gonna be able to get grants.
Right. This is to bring in money to do energy conservation.
It's not gonna cost us money.
So the first step is the designation, and then in future grant rounds, then once you're designated, then you can apply for construction money to actually do projects. So this here will just this is just to be designated a green community, and that we have to submit that we have some projects that we're going to do energy savings, because we have to at least express that we're going to be serious about trying to reduce energy use. So, so that's where they put this list together. But then by getting credits for it, and then we can get credit for some work we've done, and then apply for grants to do other work to save more energy in the future.
Mr. Chair, would the Savage Field lighting project fall under this, being that it's going to be LED lighting as opposed to the existing?
In terms of the energy savings, we could...
Well,
we could
the
use
credit,
that.
or is there any funds that could be recaptured, or?
Right, yeah. I think we can capture prior energy savings,
Okay.
but not, it would be for future, money would be for future projects, so.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Discussion? Yes.
I want to say that I was supportive of us seeking this designation, I don't know, 2 years ago, was it? It seems like
That's
it's
about
been a
right,
while. And I'm supportive of going forward, but I'm hesitant to vote in favor of something and maybe commit the town to something that I'm not clear that we're doing. So, and I had Monday, I had Tuesday to do my due diligence, and I was unaware of the importance of getting it done, and because of that, I'm personally, I'm supportive of the idea, but I'm going to vote no, just because I don't want to commit the town to something that I don't completely understand.
Understood. Any other discussion?
And if the board, were able to meet before the 30th to approve, you could do that as well, too, so.
I mean, if that's how people want to feel, I'm happy to...
As long as the board's comfortable with me voting no, I don't need to
Okay.
postpone this.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
4-1. Thank you.
Can I just say one more thing?
Yes.
So the process moving forward is, once we submit this, they'll make a pretty quick decision, because when they designate you, you then have to decide from that list of projects which ones you're going to do with the amount of grant money that they're going to give you, and that will be due in mid-February. So once they designate you, we'll have to talk about the projects again and prioritize them.
Okay. So we'll be back.
Thank you very much.
We'll be back in touch. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is something I put on just because I know we're up against a review extension for the Clinton Armory. I know we've made some progress recently, thanks to Mr. Busno and Mr. Duval, on auctioning off some surplus property. In 2019, at the town meeting, the town asked us, the board, to take some priority properties and put out requests for proposals for development. One of them is the former Supernaut property at 172 Sterling Street, which obviously has a lot more complexity to it, being it's probably going to need some environmental remediation. But we also have the former Jeans Auto at 329 High Street, and it was my thought that not only that this was overdue on our part, but if there was any way we could look into dovetailing a new use for that property into a new downtown, which hopefully will be in place summer, fall at the latest, that would be a nice gesture on our part to show that we've making some strides there. So I guess there's a few things here. We have to figure out if we're going to apply for an extension for the Armory. That deadline is coming up. We've got Jeans, we've got that the Sterling Street property, which maybe Mr. Duffy can update us. I know there was some grant money out for potential surveying. Yeah, why don't you come up? And then going forward, I know we had some struggles with the former fire station, and we might have some other issues going, in the future. If the board was interested, I think all too often despite our best intentions, we tend to go building by building or problem by problem and don't back up and take a look at the complete inventory of needs and challenges. And so maybe this would be an opportunity to see how we wanted to do that better. But Mr. Duffy, if you want to catch us up,
Sure.
Can you talk about the Armory?
I'm not sure where to start. I think I'll start probably with the two properties for which town meeting granted us the authority to dispose of via RFP. That would be Supernaut, 172 Sterling Street, and Jean's Towing, 329 High Street. It's my opinion, I think I may have expressed this before, that I think High Street is ready to go. We have done as much with it as we can with the grant money we have received. If we choose to hold it as a municipal property, we can apply for additional funds for mediation for mass development. That's usually in the form of either the grant or 0% interest loan to a municipality for municipally owned properties. Otherwise, if we want to sell it and convey it back into private hands, I think we are ready. We've been ready for a while to form a small committee to draft up an RFP and put it out there. The purpose of forming a small committee would be to make sure that that criteria that we posit in an RFP, the information that we convey to prospective respondents about what we are looking for is sufficiently specific and represents the will of this board, the will and the desires of this board or of the community. You don't want me drawing it up myself. I'm happy to do that, but that wouldn't be a representative document. So I think we should probably have a couple people work on that. I'm happy to draw up the boilerplate and the nuts and bolts of an RFP, but in terms of what we're looking for, what we desire in terms of use or remediation or investment in the property, I think we need to make that clear to respondents so that they can respond accordingly and that we will have a defensible process that we can say, this is what we said we wanted, this is the person who came closest to what we said we wanted, this is why we've chosen.
Mr. Busna?
I think it'd be a lot easier to help Mr. Duffy put a couple of 4x8 signs on both pieces of property, just asking for proposals for the property, both properties, okay, right? And inquiring at his office with the proposals. At least we get some ideas, get some people interested in it, because they will go.
Well, I guess the question is, if we cast that wide a net, what, can we just say no? Or I think what Mr. Duffy's trying to say is that
We're looking for proposals.
Yes.
Right.
My concern would be, and I'd ask Mr. Gibbons to look into this, is that if you dispose of a property by an RFP, you need to be sufficiently specific in your request for proposals so that the person you don't choose doesn't come back and say,
Right.
This was too loosey-goosey. We could, I didn't know what you were looking for. So it has to be, the selection has to be based on the criteria that you establish. So I think that's.
So
Can't just be submit a proposal for the property. We have to set what we're looking for. That's what I think Mr. Duffy's referring to. There have to be a committee or some meetings up front to come up with that specific criteria, that the town wants for that property.
And there's a well-known case in Revere where the city put out a city parking lot for development on Revere Beach, and it was tied up for years in court, and that was basically my understanding of what I conveyed to you is based on my reading of a review of that case.
Mr. Chairman, there'd be no harm in this subcommittee, if not the existing subcommittee, to put out a request for ideas to develop into an RFP. None of us by ourselves are the end-all and be-all of what those properties can mean to the town of Clinton. So maybe that could be the role of that subcommittee, is to, in order to develop an RFP, solicit opinions from developers or put it out there that we're looking for ideas, and maybe we'll pick yours. And maybe
that has occurred to me. I mean, I don't think we can say, because we can't negotiate directly with people unless we're a different entity like a redevelopment authority. We can only accept proposals. But as a starting point, you're putting a billboard on that building, a banner, just like we have banners now saying what comes next. Send your ideas to the town website, like a page like we have the downtown page. we'll just make another page for Gene's Towing, and, you know, and we'll get, there'll be a lot of chaff along with the wheat, but, you know,
Right.
it's a good way to flush out ideas.
I don't, personally, I don't want to put that parcel on High Street out to auction to the highest bidder and not have some control over what is going to actually
This would
happen
be a
there.
way at least getting some people interested in having control.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that was an article on the, that's why we said, that's how we were gonna dispose of this property, as opposed to it being on the auction list, which you have no control. Whoever buys it,
Right.
they can do it as long as they meet zoning. This
We're just
property here
asking-
was carved out, and we're gonna go the RFP route, because then the town's controlling the criteria of what's gonna go there. But there's nothing wrong with what you're saying, is get ideas up front of what you want that criteria to look like.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the easiest thing we could do. I mean, one thing, if we want to move forward on this RFP, I think one thing that might be useful tonight to do is to kind of figure out what our timeline is for getting that RFP out there. And then we can work backwards from that timeline to figure out what steps we want to take to engage the community and to draft up this document to make in a manner that we're certain, again, is taking in a couple of viewpoints on what happens next.
Would it be Mr. Chairman, if I may, would it be practical for us to set a timeline that allows us, is it enough time between now and June to get to the final point? Because we would need town meeting approval of whatever we came up with. So
I'm not sure that we did, and maybe, I think
To
town meeting's
dispose of
already given us
property?
the approval.
I think they let us.
I think, has town meeting already given us?
I
the-
think we already, I go back, we already had an article to do that, to go up.
Oh, okay, all
Yeah,
right.
that's what I'm looking at here.
We had an article for these properties to do that, to solicit the RFPs and give the Board of Selectmen the authority to do that.
I mean, if we were going to, you know, chip in any remediation money or something, I don't think it's a bad idea to have it done by June, just in case we needed to.
Right,
You know,
good.
if we were gonna clean it up before we put it out, for some reason, you know, we would have, we need.
Yeah, it would
money
actually
there.
be useful to know, it would be useful to know if it would be useful to have some responses before we formulate the warrant, which is say, you know, do we get this out in 3 months, which I think is very doable. If we want to end, part of this thinking should be too, I mean, I don't know how extensive this discussion has to be, but do we want to keep the property? You know, there's been talk about, I'm just repeating what people have said to me. People have talked about making that the facilities director's location. I'm not saying that's a good idea or a bad idea. It's something that people have said to me. It's been talked about as maybe the cable TV / town digital media center. You know, do we want to keep it or do we want to get rid of it? It's been talked about as a park, a Veterans Memorial Park. If we want to keep it, then we need to, then we're going to want to clean it up more if we're going to keep it ourselves. But if we want to dispose of it, the virtue of getting that information back before we formulate the town meeting warrant is that if we don't get any responses that we like, and the reason we're not getting those is because the costs associated with environmental remediation, then we need to pull it back and do a little bit more work to make it more marketable to bring up its market value to where it should be.
Well, Mr. Chairman, how about we make it the responsibility of the Surplus Property Subcommittee, working with the Economic Development Director, to solicit opinions from the community and from other resources for the appropriate use of that property, whether it be a park or a town building or private development that's consistent with our vision for downtown. And as far as the timeline is concerned, make it actionable in time for town meeting in case the decision needs some kind of support from town meeting. Is that a reasonable thing to do?
You guys up for that?
I have no problem having proposals being accepted up until, let's say, May 15th. That would give us plenty of time to get it before the board if we had to go that route.
Well, you could be developing the RFP, and the RFP would go out May 15th?
The RFP, ideally, you know, to work for a timeline, ideally we'd have the RFP out by March 30th and the RFP back in 15, 21, 30 days.
So whatever date, yeah.
And we've done some work on this. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there were 4 kind of boilerplate uses.
Yes.
You know, whether you wanted to tear it down, whether you wanted to build on the current property. So we're not starting from scratch here. We had someone look at it and see, you know, what would need to be done, you know, what basic options. We're not saying what's going to go there, but, you know, if you wanted to make it into a parklet, if you wanted to level the whole thing, if you wanted to clean up yourself. So that information's out there. So hopefully if we just, you know, come up with some ideas or solicit ideas, and I'm sure someone out there smarter than me can give us some ideas. But then, like you said, if we're turning it out or if we're going to keep it, it'd just be nice to, it's a big corner for us, and I've said before, we have a corner problem in this town. That's where people sit and they look around, you know, they're sitting in traffic and they're looking, or they're stopped at an intersection and they're looking, and, you know, I think we could do a lot better with some of our corners. This is one we control, and I think we've had enough time to work on this. Let's put it on the front burner. So.
Yeah, it's only fallen in the abeyance because there's been other things that have seemed to be more
Sure.
important.
One thing which, and I'll call Chris about, since we do own it, I noticed we haven't shoveled it. So with the storm tonight, that'd be a nice corner to make sure someone from if we can get a snow blower down there, just to get the snow out, since that's ours and we want to set a good example.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Just point of clarity, so is the purpose of this just to kind of request that the surplus subcommittee start meeting more frequently to discuss these specific issues? Because I know Selectman Bosno did a great job getting all the tax property, but there was also the subcommittee, there was kind of like two groups of this. There was the tax property that we were trying to get rid of, and then there was like the fire station, these properties listed here that we wanted to kind of prioritize and strategically come up with like a big game plan for everything. Right. And if you recall, I think the last time we left off in that initiative, I was in the process of talking to the school committee about trying to take on the fire station. Right. And then, you know, yeah, right. not to use COVID as the excuse for everything, but certain subcommittees kind of fell to the back burner. This was one of them. So, I mean, I think this is a great conversation, but I think the end result just is that me and Selectman Bosno just have to start meeting on the subcommittee with Phil and start, because we do have, there are major questions that have to be at least raised and discussed, specifically like the Clinton Armory. I mean, sure. that was kind of a big deal, but it's just like we were dealing with so many other important issues over the past couple of months. It's, you know, I'm as guilty of that as anyone, but it just is that what the
it was not my
discussion is just to say like
it was not my intent to I would never suggest that the board members aren't doing their job.
I'm not taking it that way, but I was just getting a little confused because at one point we were talking about like kind of it sounded like we were talking about like forming another subcommittee.
Yeah,
and I was like, well, we already have.
If you guys are up for it, I don't think we need to do that. This was just
to make it easy. What I'm suggesting tonight is working on with the both of us, Mr. Duffy, putting like a 4x8 vinyl side down there. That way it'll last, okay, right? We use it on other property. But just to seek proposals up until, let's say, March 31st, I believe the date you quoted, right? At least get some ideas, bring it before the board, and see what we want to do. At least we'll get some ideas in black and white.
Yeah. John, if it's okay with you, why don't I do this? Why don't I this week just, actually, why at the beginning of next week, I'll just write up a little timeline. Because we have a binder up there now for wheat, and I think that goes to pretty much to the end of Christmas.
Well, I'll coordinate with you, whatever the time is, that's what we'll do, we'll put on the sign.
But yeah, we'll put it up, we'll make a little page on the website, you know, maybe we'll use the downtown people to do it, because they're sitting on their hands now.
Maybe some High Street may want it, who knows, but
I'd love to, that would be delightful.
Yeah.
But, yeah, we'll get it up there, we'll put it up there and you know, entertain it like February 15th. That way people get in, we'll get some ideas, and then we can ban them out. You know, the discussion of whether the town wants to keep the property, I don't know if that's a parallel discussion or a different conversation, but, you know, they're kind of two impulses that will feed into what we decide to do.
And just to finish up, it just seemed like when I was putting the agenda together that, you know, I keep a to-do list and things just seemed like they were all lining up here. The armories do, jeans I always see and I think about it, and, you know, whether seeing our frustrations with things like the fire station. You know, I've got a meeting with the library on Friday. So, you know, I just think sometimes we silo things. Right. And here, if it's something where, well, that's going to inform this, and that's going to, you know, these are dominoes or puzzle pieces. I just wanted to put it out there just to remind people that,
Yeah.
you know, all this stuff kind of fits together. So,
And I agree 100%, and that was actually like kind of part of the charter of that subcommittee
Yeah.
when we discussed this, is that we wanted to work with the facilities director and work with the schools and get all the different departments on board to try to make sure we're best utilizing some of the buildings that the town owns, and like to your point, not have everyone be like siloed into like, this is, you know, this is my property, these are my buildings. Well, maybe in the grand scheme of things, that building could be better suited for another purpose, and your, you know, your responsibilities could shift to another building, and so that was kind of the, and we wanted to have the fire station be a part of that, and then the armory became a part of it. So I think we should get together and definitely start revisiting this property. I mean, I can personally, I can start back off with meeting with the school committee again and asking again about the fire station. Where it left off, all the school committee was looking for was answers as to what are the zoning limitations of that building, since it's so close to the elementary school. So they really didn't have any reservations about signing it over to the town, but before they did, they just wanted to know what could possibly go there and what could possibly be built there. So I can pick up where we left off on that, and then more generically, we can start getting together as a board and discussing these properties again with Phil.
that'd be great.
Yep.
And again, I'm hoping this isn't a burden. I look at it as, we've got a tremendous opportunity here to, you know,
Yeah.
to transform these things into, you know, stuff that could either be something that benefits the town directly, or brings in goods and services that people are going to enjoy. And Supernaut's even a bigger thing. And again, there's more challenges there, but that's the last real blank slate we have for creating any kind of modern manufacturing, which is sorely lacking in this town. So it's a tremendous opportunity that we have, and I'm really excited. So I just want to make sure we didn't forget about it. So,
Mr. Chair?
yes.
Is there a motion for the Clinton Armory extension?
I
Is that what?
think we're going to go that one next.
I don't have much
We have
update on the, I personally don't have much of an update on the
Okay.
Armory property. We,
You have to give an answer, Mike?
So I think we had it till the end of this year to respond whether we were interested. So I think we can ask for an extension and indicate, because of all these issues that were talked tonight, that we've been, you know, discussing some needs assessment, but the building itself, we really, you know, with COVID and facility director leaving, we really, and we can't do anything without town meeting authorization anyway. So, you know, to say at least another 6 months, if they can give us some time to come up with a proposal for town meeting.
In the meantime, the state police are using it, so somebody's in it, so.
And to that subject, Mr. Ward and I discussed, and he asked me to reach out to the architecture firm that's actually done work in town before and is doing the library study, to receive a proposal from them to do kind of an analysis of the building, so we could have an understanding of what red flags there may be in terms of cost. So they would look at the building structurally. They would do an environmental analysis, because there was an old firing range in the basement, so there may be some contamination that would impact redevelopment. They're going to look at the systems, and then do kind of look at, not so much the community needs assessment, but kind of look at what the building might be useful as a municipal building. We received that proposal Monday before last. It was a little bit more expensive than we wanted. It was $29,500. We were looking for something more in the $20,000 range. If it's the pleasure of this board to move forward, and we think that it would be a useful endeavor, we had talked before COVID, or just the week of COVID, about using funds under my control, and the facilities director and I working collaboratively to solicit these services. Kind of, again, as other things came up, it kind of fell by the wayside, but we do have that proposal for that building.
Can I make a motion to pursue an extension for the Armory.
Second.
Do you want to say how long?
I would leave it up to Mr. Ward on whatever they're able to,
If they can negotiate.
whatever they can negotiate.
Motion made and second. Any discussion?
Under discussion, Mr. Chairman, I would advocate that we try for a one-year extension. Not so that we can delay again for another year, but if we do come up with the
Yeah, we have
plan
an answer by
to
then.
utilize that property, it would give us enough time to deal with town meeting and move forward from there.
Mr. Chair, just under discussion as well, if it's up to the, I guess, town administrator's discretion, but I would prefer if we add something into that, a reason for the request is just the impact of COVID, that when it hit the town, our priorities just shifted, and that just kind of got put to a back burner. So we would just, every community's been dealing with this, so hopefully they'll be willing to work with us and give us a little bit more time to try to, as, we're still in the middle of it now, but there is some light at the end of the tunnel, and I think we're starting to, look at some other issues and stuff that maybe we have to focus on COVID difficulties for the last number of months.
Understood. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0.
And Mr. Chairman, on that subject, does the board feel that they have enough information concerning the proposal from the architects for professional services to endorse or negate, or would you prefer I bring you back a copy of the proposal at your next meeting?
I guess we should see if we get the extension.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
Okay, get that first. And we'll
Yeah,
go from
you're
there.
right, yeah. You're right, yeah. We have the
I'm not
proposal on hand.
opposed to it. I mean, we're going to have to, yeah, if we're really interested in it, we're going to have to see what we're taking on. But
Yeah.
let's make sure that they're going to let us take it on first. Can that wait 2 weeks?
Yeah, it makes sense to get a feel for we don't want to sign a contract if the question is moot, so.
Yeah, okay. We'll revisit that. All right. We can keep you up here for the COVID-19 Economic Recovery Grant?
Sure. And do you want a brief update on Supernaut, or?
If you don't mind, yeah.
Okay. Only that I think Gene Stowing is ready to go and Supernaut is not ready yet. They're out there. I had a very long conversation with the engineers and LSPs who are out at the site there this morning. They've done most of their testing. Everything has come back. Nothing has come back scary yet. In fact, some things have come back better than we would have liked. They're going to be their plan is to be out on the site next Wednesday to do soil gas and surface water testing. They should have all the testing wrapped up for the end of the year, and we should have all that data crunched and scenarios in our hand by the middle of February, at which point we can take a look at what we think the cost would be to address the environmental conditions of the site, understand what we think its market value is, and then decide, do we put it out now, or do we need to make this again, do we need to make this more attractive to get the kind of outcome we want? In that instance, I think what we want ideally is for that property to go back into a productive use that is jobs creating. And what we want least is what we just had, which was 6 years of someone land banking it, just sitting on it, doing nothing with it. Someone who's got to just put a solar farm there, which is perfectly fine, but it doesn't do a thing for the town. It doesn't do anything to address the subsurface contamination. So I think we need to get that to a place where ideally we put it out. Somebody is confident that the environmental aspects of the site are in shape, are under control, and they can just develop the site. So.
Thank you.
Thank you, Phil.
Moving on to COVID-19 Economic Recovery Grant.
Sure, this is a request to allow the town to make an application to a program with another one, the Local Rapid Recovery Planning Program. This is a technical assistance grant, no money, just technical assistance. It's from the Downtown Initiatives Program, so it's targeted towards commercial areas, and it's to provide planning assistance to help towns devise location-specific recovery plans to assist businesses as we come out of the place we are now. Application is due Friday. The plans will be done by June 31st. It will include recommendations for actions. It's kind of probably like the green, it's being talked about the way the green communities designation is talked about, or our complete streets designation, which we got a few years ago. It's to be one of these plans that will be kind of a threshold requirement for what is anticipated to be capital funds down the road. But that's not what it is now. It's technical assistance. And I don't know the shape of what the recommendations will be. I just know that it's there, and if we can get one of these plans undertaken, then we might get some good ideas, and we might qualify for funding down the road.
Do you need anything from us?
Just your approval, and then I'll need you to sign the cover form when the application is complete and the software application generates the form.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve or request the Director of Economic Development to seek approval or to obtain a technical assistance grant to develop a COVID-19 recovery plan for local businesses.
I'll second that motion.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know if you want to stick around for parking, but we'll go to West Ledge Streetlight Power Agreement. The board needs to approve a power services agreement for the streetlights in the West Ledge development. Mr. Ward?
Mr. Chair, that's just seeking authorization for the chair to sign the agreement. The light posts themselves are scheduled to be delivered any day, either this week or next week, by the end of the month. So once the construction is done to install those and pull the wire to put the lights up, then this agreement here will allow National Grid to build those lights to the town. So it's just an agreement if the if the board could authorize the chair to sign, and then we'll take ownership of the lights in that development.
Thank you. What's the pleasure?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we approve the power services agreement for the streetlights at West Edge Development.
I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. We've been discussing parking in the downtown area. Mr. Kovas has put together some information relative to the issue. I turn the floor over to him.
All right, so I just went through the 2017 downtown parking plan, and just to get an idea of really what was down there for inventory, and there were a couple things that I wanted to focus on, which was specifically the on-street parking. And there was concern about residents having limited parking around the High Street area. Based upon the parking areas, it looks like there is adequate parking for the apartment buildings, whether the subway lot in between Clinton Bar and Grill. There were approximately 42 spots there, which there typically are cars parked on High Street in the morning in front of there. You have 54 High Street and the Strand lot have approximately 20 spots. There's also some cars there. And with this, I didn't, looking at the perspective and everyone's ideas the last meeting, I don't want to put anybody out or in a jam by taking parking away from them. But in looking at the municipal parking lot and the available parking that's down there, I personally, I would be comfortable instituting a year-round parking ban on High Street. And that's kind of where I figured there was going to be discussion for it tonight. And
I'll open it up.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I want to thank Selectman Kobus for developing this, and I'm generally supportive of what he's put down here for a ban, at least to try. Nothing we do is permanent. We can evaluate it later, how it's working. Like I said at the previous meeting, the one opportunity I have to really see how the parking on High Street and municipal lots is being utilized is during snowstorms. And there's a couple of things I observed because I kept checking them in the days subsequent to the storm. There were at least 3 vehicles parked in a line across from, on Lower High Street, just below where Georgeson's Market used to be, and there was a big plow out around it, and it was left like that for 3 days because the cars at least 2 of the cars didn't move. And that's a situation that can't go forward. Residents need a place to park. They need to find a way to get off the street so the snow can be removed. There was that. There was, in my opinion, there's an ongoing problem at Oxford Court and at the municipal lot on Walnut Street. And I like the idea of those lots being made available for snow emergency off-street parking to allow residents to get out of the way, but there has to be a way of getting them out of those lots. So A, the lots can be cleared, and B, the lots can be made available to daily business users and people employed downtown. That's the daytime parking in those lots is supposed to be available for people doing business on High Street. And if residents are parking there for 3 days and not moving, that impacts that use of those lots. Oxford Court is the worst abuser. By our lease agreement, the residents of Oxford Court have the opportunity to park there in that lot, in the town part of the lot at night, but they're supposed to be out of there by, I believe, 7 a.m. I'm not sure what it says in the lease, but they're supposed to vacate that lot, and they don't. They stay there for 2 or 3 days, never move. You can tell by just driving by them. And they have an empty, abandoned lot at the rear of their property that they don't utilize. And that hurts businesses, that hurts people working downtown. I believe the agreement with Oxford Court is they're not parking on High Street or Church Street during the day either, and they are. And this is separate from a snow emergency parking ban. It's a problem that's been going on down there for years. I don't know how many years. When did we start dealing with them? Yeah, it's been a while. And the second part of this, it's not parking, but we had a major discussion, negotiation problem with dumpsters being located on Town of Clinton property. And it looks like a third world country down there. Pigs. They had 2 dumpsters overflowing and piled up all around it. I went by the next day, they had 3 dumpsters piled up, parked in the municipal parking lot, taking up parking and overflowing with trash. And they're not allowed to have open dumpsters. They have a rubbish removal program there with an internal dumpster where the residents are supposed to bring their trash. I don't know how they get to put those dumpsters there. And I'd like to ask, separate from this whole parking thing, that either the building inspector or the Board of Health or the town council contact the dumpster company and have those things removed immediately, because it's a deliberate, intentional violation of Oxford Court's operating agreement with the town of Clinton. So that's what I have to say about this subject.
Mr. Chair, I had met with Mr. Duffy this past week down at Oxford Court, down at the Church Street Municipal Parking Lot to get an idea of the layout. And Mr. Duffy walked me through, and one of the things that I think would be prudent would be having the parking lot marked. And Mr. Duffy mentioned about having either a different color paint marking or whatnot, so that way it signifies this is municipal, this is Oxford Court, or what, there are a few different groups that have access to that parking lot. But it is very unclear going down where it starts and where it ends. So I think one piece of it would be looking at marking the parking lot with signage, and again, no resident parking signage I still find to be very vague and confusing.
I can park there, but they can't. Right.
So I think, in looking at parking that is very concise and marking the lanes, I think it would just make everything easier for identifying the violators.
You'll be able to see it very clear tonight after the storm. There'll be a half a dozen cars on High Street, and it'll be there for 2 or 3 days.
I guess here's my problem. Like, we all know, there's a VW in that Walnut Street lot that hasn't moved in better part of a year, unless they just park exactly in the same spot. So if I know and you know, and people who come up to me on the street, they know, you know, they'll pepper me with, there's people on this corner, there's people on this street. At a certain point, I don't know, I've been asking for years for you know, to bring the hammer down, and everyone wants to be patient. I get we want to be good neighbors, but at a certain point, if we're not going to do anything, nothing's going to change. So I don't know, you know, I was looking at, you know, in advance of this, looking at how other towns do overnight parking, and I guess Brookline's one of the most, you know, notorious about it, but, you know, they don't tow, but unless you're in a no-tow zone, or you're in a tow zone, or you have 5 unpaid tickets. But I don't even know if we're giving out tickets at this point. Like, we've got to, if we're not going to change, I don't know how we expect anybody else to change, because it's just toothless. And we can sit here every night for the, you know, every other week and talk about this, but if we're not going to hold people accountable, we ask them. We sent out mailings. You know, I've tried to be patient. My first year on the board, I wanted to jump in on this, and everyone wants to go slow. I get it. Nobody wants to, you know, tow somebody they know, and I don't want to put people out. But at a certain point, it's a public safety issue. We have narrow streets in this town, some of the neighborhoods, and if there are cars, multiple of them, especially on a corner where a plow has to go around, I don't know how that makes this town any better. And if it takes slapping a couple tickets on these cars to show them that you know, this is not right, then that's what we have to do. But, I mean, at a certain point, with all due respect, we've had this discussion for at least 3 years, and it's going to be the same next year if we don't do anything. So I'll leave it up to you guys, but I love plans, I love good ideas. At a certain point, we have to just make some decisions to enforce these rules and hold people accountable, or nothing's going to change.
I can assure you, if they start towing these cars every time, they will stop parking there. So wait, once
I'd love
it
to
starts
see it.
costing them money, they will take action.
Mr. Chairman?
Hold on a second, Matt. Yep.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Matt.
No, are you making a motion?
Yeah, I'm going to make a motion that we request the police department, especially for the duration of this upcoming snowstorm, to aggressively and intensively enforce the no parking ban on High Street, the municipal lots, and Church Street.
I'll second that motion.
And that enforcement is to include towing, irregardless of 5 previous tickets or not. If they're blocking snow removal on High Street, they should be towed. That's my motion.
Mr. Chair,
second that.
just a question on the motion. So is that motion specific to the winter, like storm, snow
Yes.
removal? Okay.
Start with the winner.
Second.
Motion made and
That's already been
seconded.
seconded,
Okay,
yeah.
sorry.
I guess we have 4 seconds. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Mr. Ward, if you could just share that with the department. I'm not sure they're watching tonight, but...
Okay, I have another motion to make?
Yeah.
Mr.
Let's go.
Oh, wait a minute, I'm
You
sorry,
did the
Matt,
last
no, Matt let me go, so.
Sorry.
I'd like to make a motion to institute a parking ban on High Street and Church Street between the hours of 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. But in looking at it, maybe a 1 hour, I've noticed some towns do 1 hour parking between that time, and I think to be cognizant of anybody who's using Chiconi's Fitness, which may be in the middle of the night, that way it gives them, you know, they wouldn't be in jeopardy of towed. So I guess to
I thought we're supposed to be on the road after 10 o'clock. Anyway,
Well, I think,
anyway.
So,
Jim, no,
let me
Fair
redo
point.
that. So I'd like to make a motion to institute a 1 hour parking ban between the hours of 2 a.m. and 6 a.m., 7 days a week, year-round, on High Street, between Union and Water, and Church Street, between Chestnut and Main.
All right. just so I'm clear before we go
Second.
forward. Yep. So, just so the wording on that, it's a band between 2 and 6. You're allowed to park for only 1 hour at a time.
That's how they,
Yep.
unless, well, there's, for discussion, unless anybody has a different opinion or idea on it, but that seemed to be pretty standard. 10 or so community.
Under discussion, Mr. Chairman, I do want to clarify that that's separate and distinct from the
Yes.
Oxford Court resident parking ban, which is during the day. Oxford Court residents, if they're, and the only way the police can enforce that is by running plates, but if they're parked on High Street during the day or in the municipal lot on Church Street during the day, they're towable. And I'm hoping that at some point we can get that enforcement going as well.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Mr. Duffy had mentioned that in the original lease agreement that there was going to be an arrangement using stickers for the Oxford Court residents. Is it?
So, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'm generally in favor of this. The only thing is, I don't know if I'm crazy about the 1 hour. I almost think it should just be no parking, just for the sake of making it easier for the police to enforce. They drive down the street, if they see a car, it's a done deal. They don't have to drive, check their watch, do something else, come back and check again and make sure that's the same car. It's just I would rather it just be no parking, but with two exceptions. I'm not exactly sure how we can fit this in here. One, Selectman Kobus already brought up, which is Chaconi's Family Fitness. We'd have to figure out some way for the customers of Chaconi's Family Fitness, since it's a 24-hour gym, that have to be identified so that they would know not to get ticketed. And second is, the last thing I would want this parking ban. Sometimes people, when they go to bars, they may have too much to drink and they may get a ride home from somebody else or call a Uber or something like that, and they'll leave their car there. The last thing I want is a parking ban like this to encourage, people are scared that they're going to get ticketed or towed, so they might make a bad decision. So I'm generally in favor of this. I wonder if it's worth, I don't know, maybe discussion in the traffic subcommittee, or I just think before we move ahead with instituting it, like I said, I'd be in favor of it just being no parking, but I do think there's a couple details that we should iron out, and the two details that I just brought up, one with a 24-hour operation and the other with how to be forgiving and flexible for people who are making the right decision by getting a ride home and not driving. So, maybe it's that they get ticketed, and then if they can kind of plead their case with any sort of, I don't know what evidence they would they'd have to provide, but if they could go to the police and kind of plead their case that, hey, this is why I did it, then we would communicate to the police department that that's something we would want some leniency on.
Mr. Chairman, if I...
I'm going to let him go first.
All right, so I had spoke to Lieutenant Coyne about that, and he had mentioned that they use their discretion based upon where the vehicle is parked. If it's parked in front of establishment, then it's the same thing. They don't want to promote anybody drinking and driving.
Right.
So I think the frequency of the vehicle being there, it plays into that. I don't disagree with you, and I think with Chaconi's Family Fitness, where it is a 24-hour gym, someone goes at 5 in the morning, I think again to use the discretion in going there. But I don't dispute your point.
Chairman, just to comment on Selectman DeVault's concerns, unless I'm wrong, we have a 10 o'clock curfew Gyms are closed and bars are closed.
Everything's closed.
If I'm not,
Everything's closed.
everything's
time being,
closed,
I mean-
but currently, gyms are closed and bars are closed.
Yeah, well, I mean,
And
I'm
everything's closed at 10.
Yeah, but I'm assuming this law is gonna be something that we're gonna keep in effect in the future.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is, I'm proposing that we adopt the Selectman Kovas's recommendation, and we also pursue a study in the Traffic Committee for resolution prior to the town reopening.
Sure. Fine with me.
Springtime.
And hopefully, first off, I want to thank Mr. Kobus for putting this together and walking around and taking a look at these things, because all too often we fall to studies and don't actually go out and do the legwork. So thank you. And I brought this up last time, so hopefully I'm not coming across as too much of a killjoy, but and I've seen overnight parking bans in other communities, so that DPW could do street cleaning or snow removal, or, if they're doing some kind of, line painting or something. What I can't get my head around is what value this gives us other than taking inventory, which some people say is too small, and limiting it further. If we have a parking problem, I don't see it as a 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. problem. If they're gone by 6 or 7 or 8, and the businesses have spots for their customers to park, frankly, I don't care what people do overnight if it's not, as we said before, in the way of public safety or snow removal or things like that. So I'm just trying to get my head around what this accomplishes. And it might just be me not getting it, but if we're looking at people to develop, and a couple of years ago, and it was either the year before or last year or the year before, we changed some zoning downtown to allow more residential development above those buildings, to maybe make those properties more appealing to someone who wants to develop it, and do a mixed use with a commercial property on the bottom and some residential on the top. If we're going to, Oxford Court aside, if we're going to take those existing properties that maybe don't have parking assigned to it and strangle what little parking that we might be able to leverage toward it, I don't know what that how that's going to help. If no one's going to develop a residential property if someone has no place to park, even overnight, if they're gone at 6 a.m. So again, not to be a killjoy, I just want to understand what this gets us.
So, Mr. Chair, I think in looking at it, if you look at the apartment buildings that are down there right now, it does show that there is off-street parking available to them. Now, whether the amount of off-street parking is adequate to meet the needs of the of the residents, I had proposed a little further down that if a landlord does find that this does have a negative impact, then at least they can be invited and try to figure out a solution to it. But until they raise that point,
I tend to agree with Selectman Kovas. Like, make them come to us if that's an issue for them. If the developer has a parking issue, then we'll try to work with them. But I think the default status should be that nobody's parking. I mean, how many times have we said when there's so many things that we can't control. We can't control that we're far away from 495,
I get it.
right?
Yep.
So one of the things that is in our control is the ability to make sure that parking spaces directly in front of a business in town will remain available for customers. That's something that is within our control to try to do, which we're trying to do now. So the purpose of this parking ban is really to expose the people that are using those parking spots in front of stores as their own, their residents that live there. They have parking in another area, but for convenience, they're parking on High Street in front of businesses that could normally be, those spots could be used for customers.
I totally agree, but this is 2 to 6 a.m., right?
Yeah, but the rationale is that it would expose the people that are permanently parking in those spots.
But if they're gone at, why don't we just go by at 6 and tell everybody at 6? If they're there, there's no business, other than Chaconi's, there's nothing open between 2 and 6. So we're not really stealing any business spots then. As I said before, like, ideally, these spots are going to serve a lot of different purposes. I don't see what having an empty parking spot in the middle of the night is going to help a business downtown that doesn't open until 8. I mean, I see what you're saying, but why don't we drive around at 6 or 6:30 or 7 if we want people gone by then, and then tow everybody? Let these people sleep and go to work.
So you're, so now you're giving the police what, like a 1-hour window to surveil, and I think what this is giving them more flexibility. They're going to have 4 hours to be able to look.
But I could come back at 7 and park there.
What's that?
I could come back at 7 and park there and be there till 9 when someone's trying to open. I totally understand what you're saying, and I think enforcement's, I don't think our parking problem is between 2 and 6 a.m. So.
Okay, we're going around in circles, so.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with you, but by implementing this, we're creating turnover in those spots. People that are parking there, that live in the neighborhood and park there all day long because they don't leave. And one way of noticing that or observing that without snow is lately there's been I've noticed a bunch of cars that basically pull a U-turn on High Street and nose into the parking, and they're at the wrong angle. It's crystal clear how they parked, and they're observable for 24 hours being parked there all day long. So they're not working in the buildings, or not buying in the buildings, they're living in the buildings. And to try to address your concern, if Selectman Kobus is amenable to this, I'd like to put a sunset on this 3 months, January, February, March 30th. And the board can review it at that time. If it doesn't take action to continue it, then it sunsets. So that's a motion to amend the motion under discussion.
Second.
Motion to amend the motion under discussion. Any discussion on the amendment? Hearing none, all is in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0.
And Mr. Chair, just to be clear, I am also in favor of, if there was an easy, obvious way to identify residents who are utilizing those parking spaces during the day, I would be in favor of ticketing them. But it's much more difficult during the day for the police to be able to discern unless we work out some sort of either we require the residents to put some type of identification on their vehicles, or we get information, license plate information of the residents that live there from the property owners. Unless we take steps like those, it's just more difficult. They blend in more during the day when there's regular customers parking there. It's more difficult.
I understand. I would love that we just start on the people who park there for all day. I don't care where they're from. If it's a 2-hour zone and they're parking there all day, that's our problem. The problem is, and if that's too hard to figure out, then we need to figure out a better enforcement system, because that's the problem, that people who work at these places are parking right. I've seen it when we walked around and did our tour before this downtown project started. I saw many people who work there pull right in front of a business, and these are the same people who are complaining, what's going to happen to my parking spots? It's not your parking spot. And so what we have to do is, if we're not going to enforce that stuff, again, I'll support this to see where it goes, because I really do appreciate Matt doing the work here. But if we don't fix the problem during the day, what happens between 2 and 6 is not going to matter. So again, we have to get out there and enforce these things. We're spending $5 million on this downtown, and if we're going to go back to the same old problems with people park wherever they want to park and nobody cares, then I don't know what the point is.
And I agree with you, Mr. Chair, specifically because probably the second offender of that is some of the employees of some of the businesses that park there. And you are absolutely right. This will not expose them. So we do still have to figure out some way to identify that we have to do everything within our power, in my opinion, to ensure that those spots stay open for the businesses. It's one of the few luxuries that locale in town can provide, is that you have, most of the time, you have an opportunity to park extremely close to the business that you want to support. So, yeah, I think this is a step in the right direction, but I 100% agree with you that we still need to figure out how can we now keep those spaces open during the day and ensure that during the daytime, there's nobody abusing those parking spaces.
So, Mr. Chair, the last thing, I think this is just one of the first step in trying this approach, and I think that, after this, I think including a, map on the town's website, or just making it available for people to see that there is parking that's off-street in the municipal parking lots, and then having conversations with the business owners that, that this is what, we're trying to create the turnover, and they can also help by parking a couple blocks away from their business, but.
Chairman, I just want to add that I understand this may not solve the problem, but it sends a message. It sunsets in 3 months, but it gets people accustomed to knowing that there's a problem and we are going to address it. And I think probably nobody's really going to like this idea, but I think for High Street, I think we should seriously consider meters and meter enforcement, because then it's just no question. You walk by the meter's expired. If it's 2-hour parking, you can't feed the meter. It's something we should discuss, consider, and maybe implement. But in the short term, there's a problem. It's not going away. Enforcement is difficult, but I think these two motions will at least stimulate some conversation about how to finally correct the problem.
I appreciate the discussion, and I do agree that everything should be on the table. As I said when we talked about jeans, we're cutting the ribbon on a new downtown, and now's the perfect opportunity to say, hey, this is our new toy, and here's how we're going to use it from here on out. So I encourage any and all good ideas, including exploring maybe some zones where there are meters. So thanks for talking this out. I appreciate your patience. Yep.
Can I piggyback one thing on this? So also included it was just a procedure on proposing a snow ban, right? And so I know today Mr. Ward had sent out an announcement, but what I'm hoping is that if there's if we can get something that's structured and consistent, and that way the town residents then, it's almost on a cadence. When they get that call, then they know that, all right, the parking ban's in effect.
All right, let's vote this, and then we'll do that.
Say it again?
We'll vote on this one, and then...
Oh, we didn't vote yet?
No.
we didn't.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
That
was a long...
Yep, all's in favor? Aye, opposed? 5-0. Go ahead.
I wasn't, no.
You're a no?
Yeah, no, I was still talking about this. You kind of just pushed that through quickly.
Discussion? More discussion?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I would like to make an amendment to Selectman Kovas's motion that it just be no overnight parking, and that we get rid of the 1-hour parking and make it no parking.
Okay.
So we're going to make an amendment to an amendment, though, because Mr. Conley...
It's the second amendment.
No, it's an
taken
amended
this as
motion now.
another-
My amendment passed, so.
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So now we're voting on a 3-month parking ban. We'll take it to the end of March. How's that? January, February, March. From 2 to 6 a.m. on the streets named by Mr. Kovas, which he can turn over to Mr. Ward and the police department. Any other discussion? All's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Matt?
So just trying to establish the snow ban procedure. That's all. So I don't know if, included in that, I know that down on Prescott Street over here, after the last storm, it looked like cars were parked in the road, and you could see the plow. It was like slalom
You'll see
plowing.
it tomorrow night, man, on High Street.
So I think, to try to, we can then start encouraging them to park their car 1,000 feet down in the parking lot and keep that open. But I think the more that we can kind of funnel them into it, I would say the start would be that all call. I think it would be a key piece of it, and we can then have a campaign to try to get people into registering for the service.
So that was the emergency lot idea? Giving people a place to park if they can't park on the street? Was that in there? Or am I thinking of another town?
Maybe another
I've
town.
seen that idea, okay, so I'm not gonna talk about that then. All right, so what we did today was, we sent out an all-call. I know, it was gonna go up on the town, we have the flashing blue lights at the intersections. We did a mailing with the tax bills explaining, expectations as far as, the parking ban and snow removal on sidewalks, fire hydrants, catch basins. We put something up on the town, I already said webpage, but also the Facebook page. Yeah, I don't think that that's asking too much for a snow emergency if we figure that out. And maybe there's a way that we can, if Chris can just work through dispatch or not to put anything more on Mike's plate. He doesn't have to be the announcer for this stuff. But yeah, I think you and I, maybe in the snow removal, we can sidebar on this and just make sure, we'll see if we're missing anything.
And the last piece of the cadence would just be when the snow ban ends, that a call then goes out and explains that then, you know, it's over, because then that's how a lot of municipalities will then have cars recalled from the municipal parking lot so they can be cleared out. Typically, it's, you know, by noon after the snow ban ends, and I just think it's trying to get that order in peace, with the hope that eventually people on, you know, Nashua Street or Grove Street will maybe start moving their cars to the municipal lots when they're able to allow for easier snow removal in those areas.
Okay. All right, let's see how this goes, and we can sidebar on that subcommittee with Chris. Any other discussions, please?
Before we move on
Yes.
from the parking issue, I just want to circle back to first, that my original motion was to request diligent, intensive
Yes.
enforcement immediately, especially during the storm, including parking, towing on High Street and Church Street and the municipal lots. I want to make sure that we get that request to the police department as soon as we can,
Please.
and convey the sense of aggressiveness we want to see in implementing this policy.
Please share that with the,
Again, at this hour, certainly I'll call dispatch or the chief or someone, but, you know, I don't know if the dispatch would be looking for some authority from the chief or someone.
Yep.
to
I
put out
understand
order.
that, but tomorrow morning, those same cars are still going to be blocking
Oh,
High
yeah,
Street.
yeah, oh, sure.
yeah, we don't have to wake anybody up.
Yeah, no, definitely, if they need to do something in the morning, absolutely, yeah. But I'll try to get a hold of chief tonight.
And the first thing that I did bring up was the dumpsters. I want
Yes.
to request, I'm making a motion that town administrator contact the Board of Health, the building inspector, and request the assistance of town council, and immediately, as soon as is allowable under any legal restrictions we have, ordering those dumpsters removed, and if we can fine the property owner for having them, I'd like to do
uncovered
that.
ones,
It's a
right?
violation of our lease agreement. It's a deliberate, knowing, intentional violation, because we had some intensive conversations with them, and they resisted the need to remove those dumpsters, and now they're back again, and they're not being maintained properly, and I don't know, when do they stop? There's 3 there now. They're going to be 4, 5, or 6?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Just under old and new business, are there any updates on the Savage Field lighting proposal or request for proposal?
Sorry, what was that?
Any updates on the Savage Field lighting proposal? I know there had to be an addendum.
Oh, just that we just finally finished the RFP, so with a lot of help from some outside consultants, helped get it all together, so we were hoping to have something for a deadline this week or next, but that'll get pushed to the week after. It'll be by the end of this month that we'll be accepting proposals the week after. All the contractors, we have a list of contractors that are interested, and we finalized the RFP, so now we can start accepting bids. but I appreciate that. But there was, yeah, we needed to do a lot of work on that to try to split out. The committee wanted to split out the labor and the purchase of the lights, but all together and back, so that properly.
So is there a tentative date as to when that would close, the request for bids would close?
Yes, it would be for the 2 weeks, so we're looking to have the bid opening on December 31st. So I talked to Chris McGowan about getting a building committee meeting thereafter so that they can accept one of the low bidder. We already have a bid proposal, not a bid proposal, we have a proposal from the lighting company, because we're in a consortium that we're able to buy direct, so we already have that price. So now we're just looking at contractors' price for the...
Excellent. Thank you.
One last piece of old new business, Facilities Director search update. The members of the search committee have been meeting and reviewing resumes. We are down to, I think we whittled it down to 7 or 8. Our Director of Human Resources is going to do some phone screening, and then our hope is to start first round of interviews between Christmas and New Year's, if whenever possible. So I thought we had a good response. For the most part, everyone was relatively qualified, and I think certainly the people we picked, there's some strong options there. So I'm looking forward to meeting them, as is everyone on the search committee.
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
Are we being upfront with the salary on these discussions? I just know the last time we went through that, we had like one of the first candidates showed up and then was not aligned with the expectations of the salary. Is that being communicated to the candidates up front before we have them in for an interview?
It was in my packet, but
Okay.
Was that
That's all.
part of? I don't know what the posting generally
No,
reads.
I think we have a range right now, so I think it's, I think the Human Resources Manager was going to do some initial contacts to ask if they were still interested and set up some interviews. So at that point, she can reinforce the salary range so that they know what they're coming into, so.
Thank you.
Good.
Yep.
Any other old and new business?
Nope.
Committee reports.
I have a report from the Municipal Evaluation Subcommittee. We were able to get together last night with the Human Resources Director. I also talked with Selectman Conley. He had a couple concerns over some of the line items, was able to work those out with him. The Human Resources Director has a lot of great ideas to kind of take this evaluation to the next step, but the agreement of the committee last night was that this is a good first step. So we feel confident that we're going to start with this. So I will be asking for a vote from the Select Board to approve this form. And once it is approved, it would be, I don't know if I'd have to make a motion for this, but I would like the Selectmen to take this form and fill it out and return it to the Human Resources Director within the next 2 weeks. And if anybody has any questions about how to fill the form out, you can reach out to me, you can reach out to the Human Resources Director. Essentially, it's broken up into different groups. You should all have a copy of it. There's line items. These line items are made up of the town administrator's contract requirements and also some line items taken from other municipal evaluations that we have looked at. And all the selectmen have to do under each line item is just check or X mark in the column that appropriately they think is where the performance falls under that particular line item. Then the Human Resources Director is going to take the scores and summarize them. And the chairman, your role in this, working with the Human Resources Director, is just that at some point when the evaluation is finished and submitted, at the subcommittee, we can go into the report in greater detail with Michael, and we can talk about things he's doing great, things we think that might be able to help him out with. But then at a future selectmen's meeting, you as the chairman would just give a brief summary of the evaluation, and, no need to go into any great detail, but just to kind of give a general summary of the, we're obligated to do that, just to comment on the evaluation. So the first motion, I'd just like to make a motion that we adopt this form as the evaluation form for the town administrator.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0.
And the second motion I would like to make is that in 2 weeks' time, that this form is completed and returned to the Human Resources Director.
Can we set a date on that, Ed, just to, so,
Well,
I believe our next meeting is January 6th.
that's we got a week off for the, I think we got 5 Wednesdays this month, so,
Well,
Is 3 weeks
oh
okay?
yeah, the holidays I don't know if the holidays are going to interfere with.
is
Why don't we-
is
when
January
is our
5th
next
okay, or
plan?
January 4th?
Yeah, when's our next planned selectmen's meeting?
The 6th.
Well, January 6th will be fine then. And all that date is just the date for them to be turned in. There's not going to be any, we're not going to address it at that meeting.
Okay.
That's just a date for it to be turned in.
Okay, so we'll say January 6th.
Yep. And if there's, well, I'll let the motion.
Is there a second? Did we get a second?
Yes.
Second. Discussion?
Can I just make a request just on the formatting aspect? There's just a couple things that, like, a couple words are cut off, but can we make just like a couple
Yeah,
format, the content is
Yeah.
great, just the
correct.
format.
Yeah, I'll work with Mike and with Alexis on sending out an electronic copy to everyone to fill out, and if people don't want an electronic copy, we'll provide a hard copy, and yeah, these formatting issues will be resolved so all the words can be read.
Perfect.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all is in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Under discussion, I'm not sure if there's a motion relevant to this, but you had proposed, after review, the chairman would create a summary and present it to the board. My opinion is that summary would become part of the town administrator's employment record, so I would propose that summary be, not that I have the very high esteem for the chairman and his ability to write and craft, far surpasses my own, and I recognize that, but I think something of that significance should be subject to vote by this board.
Oh, yeah, sure.
I concur.
It's fine with me.
Okay. We didn't need a vote on that. We're good?
No, as long as we're good, as that's understood before it became final, it would be a
Yeah,
subject to.
I would appreciate that.
And Mr. Chair, just, if, I was just suggesting that that's what I am familiar with how the school committee handled evaluations. We would fill them out, we would submit them, and then the chairman would read a brief summary of the evaluation at a meeting. Yeah, it doesn't have to, whatever we decide. I think Bob is a part of that subcommittee with us, and he did mention that there were some, because it's a public position. I don't want to speak for you, Bob, but you did talk about this briefly.
Anything that's, when the summary's going to be presented, it has to be done in open meeting. I mean, that's the unique position with the town administrator's position. All the other reviews are going to take place below the town administrator, they're not done in a public meeting. This one would have to be done in a public meeting. It can't be executive session. And not only does the summary go into the town administrator's record, but each of the 5 evaluations from the 5 board members, your evaluations of the town administrator will all be part of the town administrator's, his personnel file. So they all go in there. But the summary would be something, if that was going to be presented, it would have to be done at an open meeting. So, and again, when we talked about this at our meeting last night, think we actually, not to put words in Ed's mouth, but it's almost like this is a dry run. This document, and Alexis agreed, this is just the first pass. This is going to change as we move into next year, because at that point in time, the Board of Selectmen is eventually going to have to be set, they're going to be setting goals for the town administrator. At least that's my understanding. So this evaluation form very well may change. But, the way we talked about last night at the subcommittee meeting was just, this is a first step. It gets the board kind of used to doing this. But there's a lot of, in my mind, there's still a lot of processes here that have to be dealt with. The summary, to Mr. Conley's point, who's going to approve the summary before it gets presented? He just said he wants the whole board to approve it, so there's a process there. How's that going to get done? Again, that would probably have to be done in open meeting. It would be a deliberation by the board. A lot of things that I think that you still have to be discussed here. This is just really the first step.
Chairman, if I may, I'm supportive of moving forward with this. I don't see it so much as an evaluation, because we haven't told the town administrator what we're evaluating them on until we prepare this document. I'd like to see us use this as a tool to set measurable goals and objectives for the town administrator going forward, more than this is our evaluation of the town administrator. I'd like to see it as a document that helps us guide the town administrator in the direction that we want him to be measured by. So,
Yeah, I
it's not a
tend to
motion, it's
agree.
just a-
Right, I'm just looking through it, there's a lot of things not working with him every hour of the day that I might not have a strong opinion on, but I can look at this and say, well, yeah, that's more important than this. And so going forward, we're like, maybe some of these things aren't things he should be doing. There are some things that, he should be. So that's, I do applaud the committee for putting this together. And yeah, it's a process, and we're just looking at, not so much finding things to criticize, but like finding the points of emphasis that we really want him focusing on.
Right, and I agree that the part of this initiative is to set goals, and not just set them, to work with Mike to talk about what goals we think are feasible. But just know that probably 60 to 70% of these line items are taken directly out of the contract, the town administrator's contract, and that was town council's recommendation.
Okay.
So I understand the concern that we haven't told the town administrator, or we haven't given him maybe as much guidance in terms of expectation, but there is a contract that has certain responsibilities on it, so that's just where we're starting. But yeah, and that's what we talked about at the meeting last night. And that's why I'm fine with Selectman Connolly's interpretation of this, that this is a kind of a dry run, for lack of a better term, because the board, as far as I know, we haven't filled out evaluations before, so it's the first time that we're going to be doing it. So everyone's going to be learning, and the thought process was to start at the top with Mike, so that then human resources can work with Mike, and we can support them to start to institute an evaluation process for the directors that report to Mike. So eventually it's gonna work its way down to everyone, but it just made sense to, if we're going to expect other people to get evaluated, then we have to kind of lead by example and start with, we have an evaluation that's an election every 3 years, so that's kind of our evaluation. And then, this is just a step in the right direction. Like I said, a dry run, and let's just kind of see where we're at in a couple weeks, and I'm sure people will meet again with the municipal subcommittee, and there'll be more feedback, but I think this is at least a step in the right direction.
Okay. Any of the committee reports? Cable committee, we're down to 2 finalists for a director position, and our hope is to get them in so they can take a look around and we can get to know them face to face, if at all possible, over the next couple weeks. So we're very close. We have 2 very strong candidates, and we just need to make our choice. So hopefully by our next meeting, we'll have some progress to report on that. Anything else? This being our last meeting of the year, I just wanted to, it's been a tough year for everybody. And you don't need me saying that to know that. We often focus on how fractured we are, especially as a country, but all you have to do is go on Facebook and see sometimes how divided we can be even as a town. But I'd like to, when I look back on this year, I'm really going to think about the ways that we are connected. I think we had some good examples tonight with Captain Burton and Representative Naughton, how people in this town, it truly is a community. And this year more than ever, I've seen how the decisions we make on this board, or that I make as chair, really affect people in this town. How it's just laid bare that cause and effect of the things we do and the consequences, good or bad, to those actions. Just as I've seen with interactions in town, dealing with this pandemic. It's just shown how the responsibilities we have to our neighbors and our family and our friends to keep them safe and to do the right thing. So I hope everyone has a good holiday season and a much better new year. We all up here take this job very seriously, and there's been some very difficult decisions that we've had to make. No one enjoys making them. I don't want to speak for the board, but going forward, I'm not going to take any vote I take for granted, not after this year. So here's hoping for a better 2021, to get High Street and our businesses open again, to stay healthy, and to take these masks off soon. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman, and Merry Christmas to everybody here
Merry Christmas
and
to
out to the
everybody in the
community,
family.
too.
Discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
See you next year.
Lord willing.